Welcome to the first ever show of Rob's Mets Talk, Episode 1 GM Search, with your host, Robert Lenahan. So as we all know, the Mets are looking for President of Baseball Operations, GM, either or both. So my first candidate that has been talked about a lot was Chaim Bloom, who is currently with the Tampa Rays, 35-year-old Ivy League grad. He oversees all baseball operation functions. He deals with contract negotiations, international scouting, despite a small payroll throughout baseball. He's more analytically driven and has the largest department of analytics in baseball. So I know he's a young guy. He's been around the league since 2005. I don't really know if the Mets are going to go in that direction since they are split with Jeff and Fred, where Fred wants to be a little more old school while Jeff wants to be analytics driven. So Chaim Bloom could be a good candidate if you want to go a little bit more analytical, but as of right now, we're not really sure what's going on with who they're interviewing, who they're thinking about, and what all other candidates that they're looking at. So Chaim Bloom, is a good candidate, young, up and coming, probably going to be a GM somewhere else if the Mets don't choose him. The next candidate that I've seen is Mike Chernoff, who is the Indians GM as of right now. He's been the GM for the last 3 years with the Indians, and as we all know, they've been a pretty good team. They haven't done well in the playoffs, except in the World Series a few years ago, but he's turned that team around over the years since he's been in charge. We all know him from his father at WFM, who was the vice president of program for CBS Radio. So he is local. He's from Jersey. So it's possible that the Mets, if they do interview him, can be a big part of this team. And we know he knows what he's doing. And since he's a local guy, maybe he would want to come back to New York. The next candidate is Doug Melvin. He's an older guy, 66 years old, who is the Brewers senior advisor as of right now. He also was the former Rangers and Brewers GM in the past. Doug Melvin is more of a Fred Wilpon guy, who is more old school and is not really analytically driven. So it's possible that he could be a good candidate if Jeff is willing to take on his father's role, go a little bit more old school instead of the new analytically driven baseball. The next candidate is Gary LaRocque. He's been a part of the Met organization for a long time in the past. He was the former scouting director of player development, and assistant GM many years back with the Met. As of right now, he's the Cardinals director of player development, and he also is going to be interviewing for the Mets GM job or president of operations. The surprise candidate that we're all shocked about but could be a big possibility is Kim Ng. She is currently the vice president for baseball ops for Major League Baseball and is the highest female executive in baseball, which is great because there's not enough females in the league and part of any baseball organization. So that's a good thing. And I think the Mets should really take a good look at her since she's been around the league. She was an assistant GM with Brian Cashman, who brought her in 98. And obviously we know what the Yankees done from 96 on. And 98, 99, 2000, they won World Series. So she was a part of that. And that's good to see that. Even Brian Cashman looked at her and says, she can be a great part of this team and a good candidate for a Mets GM job. I think that she should be the GM just based on her career, how well respected she is in the league, and I really think that she can bring a new perspective to this organization. And I think Fred and Jeff will actually listen to her more because, as we all know, women have a different way of doing things. They can be a little bit more calmer when it comes to organizational speech, public speaking, and I think they would take her in as one of them and listen to her a lot more than they would Sandy Alderson or maybe even any other GM like Chaim Bloom, Mike Chernoff. They might not listen to them as much as they would let Kim Ng run the show. And that's very important with the Mets. So what I think is that I think they should hire player ops, and I think that should be somebody like Omar Minaya. Maybe promote Chaim Bloom to that position. Maybe Mike Chernoff since he's the GM, so that's like a promotion right there. And just imagine, Met fans, Mike Chernoff and Kim Ng running the show for this organization. How great would that be? The best thing about this is we can bring new perspective and old perspective when it comes to analytics. Also, they can focus on what this team needs to make the playoffs again, make a World Series run like they did in 2015, and leave Jeff and Fred out of the picture as much as they can. Yes, we know Fred and Jeff, they sign the checks. They usually make the final decision. But we noticed with Omar Minaya, he had a way of speaking to Jeff and Fred while he was the GM. He made things happen. Yes, I know this was before the Madoff scandal, but Omar Minaya made them believe that spending big money with big free agent is the way to go, especially when you bring a young nucleus that you have from the minors with Ahmed Rosario, Michael Conforto, Dominic Smith, even Peter Alonso if they happen to bring him up this year. So in my opinion, I think that they should hire Kim Ng as GM, and hopefully they do it before the GM meetings and hopefully before the winter meetings, which I hope. Which they should, because you need the person who comes in as the GM to do a little bit of research, bring their own guys in, and see what they can do to improve this team for next year. When it comes to players, I really think they should give Peter Alonso a good shot in spring training. You know, I know they want Bruce, and if Cespedes happens to come back this year to play first base, but what I don't understand, if you can bring a guy who was in AA and AAA and produce those type of numbers in the minors, you have to look at him in spring training. It's so important to bring these young guys up, especially the way he hit. I mean, he was the MVP of the minors. I mean, he was really good. He hit a lot of home runs. His average is pretty good. Had over 100 RBIs. I mean, what did we have at first base this year? Adrian Gonzalez, Jay Bruce, Dominic Smith. I mean, it was a revolving door of first baseman. Maybe Peter Alonso can be that stability that we need. Power right-handed bat that we need since Cespedes is not going to be there. We have mostly left-handed batters. We have Bruce. We have Conforto. I mean, we have to even out this lineup, especially next year. You know, we know about our pitching staff. You know, we got Noah. We know we got Cy Grom. We know we got Wheeler, Matz, and God forgive me, but Jason Vargas also. But we know the rotation is probably going to be good as long as they stay healthy. So what I think the GM should do, whoever it might be, is to focus on who we can get to improve this team. I know everybody's like, hey, we should go after Manny Machado, but Manny Machado is going to cost an arm and a leg, especially we just found out the news that Didi Gregorius is having Tommy John surgery, and that just means right there that Cashman is going to go all in for Manny Machado. And before the injury with Didi that we found out, we weren't really sure. You know, they might look at Daniel Murphy. They might look at other guys to bring in that are much cheaper than Manny Machado. You know, you can move Torres over to short and then Murphy is second baseman. But I really hope the Mets really try to get Manny Machado. You know, it might not be possible, but at least make an offer where the fans can say at least they tried. Because as we know in the past, they would skip over the A free agents and go to the B and C free agent. And that's just there to save money. We see about Jay Bruce, even though I thought it was a good sign-in at the time, it was a bust this year. Hopefully he can come back healthy. Jason Vargas was a complete disaster. And we all know about Swarzak, who was barely in the bullpen all year. And when he was pitching for us, he was terrible. So I think that they have to look at bullpen, especially try to get a new catcher, maybe Yasmani Grandal of the Dodgers or Wilson Ramos, who was with the Rays. So I hope that they look at bullpen first, catcher, and then we go from there. Because if you notice, after June, we had the best record in the NL East. If it wasn't for June, we might have had a shot at the playoffs, maybe the wild card, maybe even the division. It's sad that we went from 12-2, and the end of June, we were 10 games under 500. It was a terrible year, but there was some good upside. Brandon Nimmo, nobody expected him to be the player that he was this year. The front office, even the fans, but we know the fans love Brandon Nimmo, even when he was a bench player. When he was a utility guy, didn't play much. Now that we see how he can play, and the best part about him, he hustles on every play, even a walk. When he walks, he runs to first base. I know he did hurt his hamstring the last game of the season, so you know hopefully that's okay and that's not too much of a big deal. Next, Michael Conforto. He's coming back from injury, and in the beginning of the year he wasn't so good. You know, he was swinging at bad pitches. It just seemed like his timing was off, which makes sense since he missed a lot of time. He didn't have a lot of time. He didn't have any spring training at all. So, but the end of the year, he was amazing. I mean, he was the Michael Conforto we saw in 2015, and we all know how that turned out. You know, he was good throughout the playoffs, even the World Series, hit a few home runs. And then we have Jay Bruce. Injured the majority of the year, had a really bad season, just signed